it remains truly one of the absolute finest motion pictures ever made. The 1959 classic Ben-Hur catapulting Charlton Heston to global fame, weaving together the tale of ancient aristocracy with the Bible, a gripping tale of loss and revenge, and a non-green screen special effects masterpiece, culminating in what could be the greatest and most brutal sporting spectacle ever filmed. You just saw a piece of the chariot race. One of the things I decry on a regular basis in Hollywood these days is the ridiculous and almost always massive failure of rebooting and remaking the classics. Movies that should never be touched in any form because they were captured so perfectly the first time around, they should be allowed to live in that original form, perhaps making it sacrilege and a punishable offense to even consider besmirching such art. Now, there has been plenty of discussion over the years about a remake of Ben-Hur, what is today called a reimagining, something plenty of producers, directors, and actors did not want to go near for fear of being slammed, not living up to the original. But Paramount Pictures and MGM finally chucked all caution to the wind and snapped their harnesses onto the charging ponies of a new version. And our Miranda Khan caught up with two of the actors involved in the new movie to ask about what makes this one different from the original.
I'm Miranda Khan outside the Mandarin Oriental Hotel in Miami, where we're about to meet the big stars of the new Ben-Hur movie.
What is your name?
Judah Ben-Hur.
Meet Jack Houston, who plays Judah Ben-Hur, and Rodrigo Santoro, who stars as Jesus.
Love your enemies.
The story of Ben-Hur has been around since Lew Wallace's 1880 novel and made into not just one, but two films, the most notable being the 1959 award-winning version.
It has a lot of classic scenes in it, one with like the galley, and I think they're sinking, and then another with the chariot race.
Are we having fun now, brother?
And while you can still expect to see some of those famous scenes in this film, don't expect a remake.
It's conceived and then executed in such a different way, whereas the 59 version was maybe a movie about revenge and a revenge movie.
Go, go, go!
This new Ben-Hur was completely rewritten from the original book, and as Jack told us, carries a very different message to its audience.
It's about hope and love and about what we have inside of us and forgiveness.
But it's really not a remake.
It's
right?
really not.
No.
Really not, really not. And I can't emphasize that enough. That's the beautiful thing. Otherwise, I don't want to go and remake something.
God is love.
Another change, a more visible Jesus.
To have the opportunity to, dive into Jesus Christ's heart, even if I got a glimpse of understanding of this, it's just huge. It was personal.
And Jesus in this movie, which is so beautiful because it's such a new take on this, for Judah, he's not Jesus Christ. He's a guy who comes to him in a moment when he's at his lowest and offers him water, and when he needs it most, he's someone who shows him kindness. And that's not discriminative, I'm talking about in religion. I'm saying that's just something that we should learn.
The 2016 version of Ben-Hur is now playing in theaters everywhere, a film that cost $100 million to make. Now, in contrast, the 59 version, starring Charlton Heston, which was actually the second movie to carry that title. There was a 1925 silent version that crashed and burned badly. The 59 version had at the time the largest budget in Hollywood history, as well as the largest physical sets of any film produced at the time. And the budget for the time, an astounding $15.2 million. In case you're wondering, we did the math. That would be over $123 million in 2016 cash. Judah Ben-Hur, otherwise known as Charlton Heston, was a steal for the producers at a mere $250,000, plus a little change here and there. He went on to become one of the biggest stars in Hollywood history later in life, something of a conservative icon with his full-fledged support of the Second Amendment and gun ownership rights. And to this day, there is talk that while he was able to overcome his conservative politics, Hollywood remains the place where if you're not left, you are left out. Let's dig into Heston and the politics of Tinseltown. Welcome back, the New York Times bestselling author, accomplished musician, and our man out west is author of the Left Coast Report, James Hirsen. Always a pleasure to talk to you, my friend. You were, by the way, before we get started, you were playing music today somewhere, weren't you?
Yeah, at the Orange County Fair. It's like an arena, and I had a good time playing rock and roll there.
All right, just making sure, because one of these days we're going to ask you to do it right here live on television.
That'd be great. Yeah, usually I play harmonica, so I do that on a lot of shows, so I'd be happy to do it.
We'll worry about the ASCAP BMI rights later on.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Charlton Heston here, because many people don't know that while he was that icon for the conservatives later in life, he started as a Democrat, and he was one of the few who really managed to look at conservative politics, independent politics, middle of the road, liberal politics. He mixed them all together rather well during his life, but he started as a Democrat.
He did start as a Democrat. He was a civil rights advocate. He was a labor advocate. He was the president of the Screen Actors Guild. Similar to Ronald Reagan, actually, he had a similar path to Ronald Reagan, this incredibly great citizen. And those, I have to say, are big sandals to fill. And you pointed out in your opening, it's so striking that the original Ben-Hur in 1959 had the largest budget, had the largest set, had the fastest growing box office. It was obviously the #1 film of the year. It holds the record for the most Oscars, tied with a couple other films. And it was, I grew up in the city of Chicago. And I remember as a small child, my aunt taking me to downtown Chicago to a theater that had changed its sign permanently in neon lights. This is the place you can see Ben-Hur. It ran for a year and a half in an equivalent of a multiplex. This was an entertainment phenomenon. So it's understandable that the producers, that Roma Downey and Mark Burnett and the studios involved do not want to label this thing a remake, because it's just, you're taking an iconic, incredibly successful film, and critics inevitably will draw parallels. And that's another reason they haven't let critics see the film. The film has been kept under wraps, and therefore, nobody's panned it. But it does have, I'm sure, a greater faith-based component that Miranda got in her interviews, simply because Mark and Roma are very, very sincere, faithful, religious people, and they're responsible for the film Son of God and the miniseries of the Bible. And
I only got a couple of minutes here. I got to stop you here because I want to get a couple of things in here very briefly. You said the word iconic, and Charlton Heston was iconic as Judah Ben-Hur. But at the 2000 NRA convention, what he did there may be as memorable a role as any he has ever played, and he may have actually not only changed but jump-started Republicans and their Second Amendment rights at that point. Here's what he said.
So as we set out this year to defeat the divisive forces that would take freedom away, I want to say those fighting words for everyone within the sound of my voice to hear and to heed, and especially for you, Mr. Gore. From my cold, dead hands.
I mean, there are people right now who still look back at that and say that he basically re-energized everybody, re-energized the Republican base for electoral victories at that time. That that is something that Republicans still look back at as a seminal moment in history. But about 90 seconds I have left. I mentioned that he was a Democrat who became a Republican. He had a lot of juice in Hollywood. He couldn't get blackballed. There are those who say that Hollywood still blackballs people who are Republicans, out Republicans, if you will. Is that really true? Because my experience with a lot of people is that if you make money, we don't really care what your politic is. We just want to make sure that you bring in the cash at the box office.
It's true. There is blacklisting in Hollywood today. However, if you're at a point in your career, as Charlton Heston was, there's a certain level of momentum, and the people that will shun you can't hurt your career. But Charlton Heston coined a term. He called people who were hiding their beliefs in Hollywood closet conservatives. That was his words. He knew that there was this antipathy. And the late Ron Silver, who had a conversion to being from left of center to right of center, he said when he announced that conversion, his phone went dead. Most recently, Antonio Sabato Jr. said he's been blacklisted. So it's real.
It is real, but I think there's a difference here. It's like The Rock, Dwayne Johnson, has made no points about it whatsoever. He'd like to get into politics afterwards. He's a Republican, but he's bankable. so he makes a tremendous amount of money for the studios, but he does keep it very quiet. You are exactly right. They have to make sure they keep it quiet. I'm all out of time. You're going to come back with your harmonica next time. James Hirsen, Readers Reports at Newsmax.com and the Left Coast Report. Thanks for joining us, James. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
All right, take care. Special reminder now for our DirecTV viewers, make sure you go to channel 366 now, because we have been airing on other channels, but right now you'll only find us at 366. That's the full slate of Newsmax programs on JLTV on Direct Channel 366. Make the switch. Join us right there on Channel 366 on Direct. Up next, the man who without a doubt is outstanding in his field, and we're going to prove it on The Hardline.